Incredible discovery. Arrogant millionaire's son hits pregnant woman husband's surprising truth. Ethan Parker had always prided himself on being a decent man, but standing on the precipice of fatherhood, he felt suffocated by an unbearable weight. Nestled in the heart of a quiet suburban neighborhood in Virginia, he poured his evenings into the local garage, turning wrenches and listening to engines roar, but drowning in the specter of financial insecurity. As laughter echoed from nearby homes, Ethan envisioned his own family, a warm haven filled with joy. Yet, the looming uncertainty weighed heavily on his chest, each laugh feeling like a mockery of his struggles. In a moment that felt impossibly ordinary, he lovingly arranged tiny pastel outfits in the nursery, each stitch a reminder of impending responsibility. But amid his dreams, a stagnant dread festered. Could he provide a future for them? The thought clawed at him, leaving him restless, unmoored. Then came the earth-shattering news. Sarah, his glowing wife who deserved everything good, had been struck by a speeding car while walking through the park. His heart plummeted as the full gravity of urgency settled. The driver, Blake Graves, a young man with a notorious reputation for his narcissistic carelessness, had chosen this day to demonstrate the hubris that came with wealth. Ethan could nearly taste the bitterness of resentment as he rushed to Sarah's side, finding her crumpled on the ground. A painful scene burned into his memory. Blake, with his arrogant indifference, glanced back momentarily, his expression revealing an unsettling confidence that his riches could bail him out. Days cascaded into nights. Medical bills amassed like a mountain he had no desire to scale. Insurance claims became a labyrinth filled with bureaucratic coldness, and each letter felt like a dagger to his pride. The image of Blake smirked like a phantom at the back of his mind, chipping away at his resolve. How could justice exist in a world where wealth overshadowed merit? Doubt plagued him, a noose tightening around his conscience. Then, in a moment of silent desperation, he opened his late father's tattered journal. The leather cover cracked open like the door to a forgotten history, revealing whispered family secrets that sent ripples through his resolve. A legacy of entrepreneurship and betrayal loomed large, making awakening long-buried ambitions feel possible. New determination surged within him, a burning desire not just for justice for Sarah, but to reclaim a power that had been snatched away before he could grasp it. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With this striking catalyst, Ethan formulated a plan. He envisioned himself confronting Blake at a charity soiree, filled with the very elite that turn a blind eye to the havoc wreaked by privilege. Armed with his father's insights and a determination born from injustice, he prepared to unmask not only Blake's recklessness, but the rot beneath the surface of societal inequities. However, newfound purpose warred with self-doubt as anxiety churned in his stomach like a storm. Confronting Blake felt like a duel between David and Goliath, one that demanded more courage than he had ever had to summon. As he stood across from Blake, each second grew thicker, the air between them crackling. Just as Ethan mustered the words that could change everything, chaos erupted, and unexpected commotion sparked in the crowd. With eyes wide and heart racing, Ethan felt a familiar pang of vulnerability wash over him. Would he ever reclaim the dignity that should have been his? Would Blake's arrogance forever shatter his dreams of family and justice? As the future hung precariously in the balance, Ethan realized he was ready to fight, but would it be enough before the tides of privilege pulled him back under? The uproar in the crowd intensified, reverberating through Ethan like thunder. His heart raced, narrowing his focus to the task before him. Instinctively, he shifted his weight, preparing to navigate through the surge of bodies, heading straight for Blake. As he moved, a kaleidoscope of thoughts whirled in his mind, each one a reminder of his fragile status, a man torn between righteousness and the overwhelming power of wealth and privilege. Ethan's determination mingled with a sense of urgency as he forced his way through the throng. The laughter and chatter around him began to dissipate into a muted blur, overshadowed by a singular thought. This was his moment. Everything he had faced, all the losses and the sacrifices, culminated to this one confrontation. But as he drew closer, doubt crept in like a shadow, drawing on past failures and unfulfilled dreams. Suddenly, Blake appeared in his line of sight, a golden-haired young man exuding an air of nonchalance, surrounded by sycophants that displayed their admiration like badges of honor. The very sight of him ignited a firestorm of resentment in Ethan, spotlighting the stark contrast between their worlds. Here stood a man who had wrecked lives with reckless abandon, while Ethan fought tooth and nail to protect his family from the fallout. Just as he steeled his resolve, Ethan recalled the weight of his father's words, buried deep within the pages of that dusty journal. "Strength is not found in silence," it had said. "It comes when you declare your truth loudly, despite the odds." The memories stoked his determination, pushing aside the chorus of self-doubt that had tightened its grip around him. A brief lull in the crowd's distraction gave Ethan his chance. He could see Blake's self-satisfied smirk, an emblem of untouchable privilege, and something shifted. It was now or never. Blake! The name escaped his lips like a thunderclap. The few that hadn't noticed the ruckus turned, eyes wide with curiosity. The laughter faded to a mere whisper, the intensity of the situation snapping tight like a spring wound to its breaking point. Blake turned, eyes narrowing with amusement. "Ethan Parker, I sent it. Where's your wife? Still nursing her wounds from my car?" The jab landed like an ice pick in Ethan's gut, igniting his rage. "Your arrogance is a disease," Ethan shot back, the words fierce and full of meaning. "You think your money can erase responsibility? That you can play gods with people's lives without consequence?" Each word felt like casting aside the shackles of insecurity. Adrenaline coursed through him, sharpening his clarity. The crowd whispered in disbelief, the tension palpable. He had their attention. He couldn't let it slip away. There was a flicker of unease in Blake's eyes, a crack in his confident facade. But before Blake could retort, the commotion erupted again, a ruckus caused by someone pushing through the tight spaces of the venue, shouting in panic. Ethan turned instinctively, sensing the distraction moving toward them. The air felt electrified with uncertainty, the chaos threatening to snatch away his moment. "Stay back," a voice called, and a rush of people pulled away, leaving a clear path for a figure rushing toward them, panic etched into their features. Ethan's heart skipped. What new disturbance could this be? Swallowing his fear, he turned back to Blake, swallowing the momentary doubt of how this all might end. Would this interference derail his chance for justice? Or was it fate offering him another doorway to push through? As he grasped for clarity, Ethan realized that the future of his truth hung in a delicate balance. Would he emerge victorious in this battle, or would the chaos and privilege swallow his voice whole? The time to act was now, yet new mysteries beckoned from the upheaval surrounding them. What revelation awaited him just beyond the fray? Ethan's focus shifted back to the approaching figure, a young woman with fear in her eyes. The impulse to turn away from Blake and extend his support toward her battled with the weight of his unresolved confrontation. He could see the shadow of panic on her face, and for a brief moment, the world shifted. The context of his own fight dulled in the face of someone else's urgent distress. She was panting, grasping her side as if the weight of the news she carried proved too much to bear. Recognition sparked within him, a fleeting image of families tethered by experiences that latched onto each other in unexpected ways. This was not just a random rush of chaos. She had purpose. As she neared, Ethan could hear snatches of her frantic words. He ran. The car had hit. Her voice trailed off, horrified realization finding its reflection in Ethan's expression. Adrenaline surged anew, intertwining with the anger already simmering within him. The very person he'd announced his intentions to confront was now at the heart of this new crisis. "Someone's hurt," she gasped, and suddenly it all crystallized for him. The woman wasn't merely a stranger. She was a victim, a reminder of the stakes at play. Could this be the moment that redefined his path? He was fighting not just for his own vengeance or justice against Blake, but for all those impacted by a careless fist of fate swayed by wealth. Ethan took a step forward. "What happened? Where is she?" His voice emerged steadier than he felt, fierce curiosity blending with a deep sense of responsibility. He wasn't just confronting privilege, he was attempting to uphold humanity, a duty he'd always held dear in the shadows of his tumultuous past. "She's over there. I need help." The urgency in her appeal ignited Ethan's heart as he pulled her gently aside to assess the situation. Blake, for his part, watched with growing discomfort, his bravado eroding as he absorbed the implications of Ethan's unyielding focus. The crowd began to part again as Ethan guided the woman. Each step was propelled by not just empathy, but instinct born from loss and desperation. He recalled moments when he had his own family wounds to nurse, those instances where progress was stifled by negligence, often born from the arrogance of those unseen. "Stay with me," Ethan urged as he approached the vicinity of the accident. There lay a pregnant woman, slumped against the ground, her eyes fluttering open and closed. A wave of dread swept over him, rapidly countering the bravado he had mustered moments before. "Help is coming," he shouted, as emergency responders became visible at the edge of the crowd. He pressed his hands against the woman's arm, trying to keep her conscious, despite the panic that threatened to pull him under. Even in a moment of selflessness, Ethan could hear Blake shifting behind him, a low chuckle escaping involuntarily. "Play the hero, why don't you? It won't change the fact that you're still just a nobody." The jeer was an assault, but it rebounded off Ethan like an echo, leaving him undeterred. In that interplay of torment and care, a revelation surged within him. This was more than just a confrontation. It was an opportunity to reclaim his narrative, to stand for something greater than personal grievances. Just as the paramedics reached them, their urgency casting a profound shadow over the trivialities between Ethan and Blake, Ethan felt a sense of clarity shimmering just out of reach. He could hear the desperate cries of the woman, the cries of a life that needed protecting in adverse circumstances. Was he ready for what lay ahead? Did he have the strength to amplify this urgency into a call for justice and change? The answers loomed like a horizon beckoning him forward as he locked eyes with Blake once more. This moment was just the beginning, a prelude to the eventual reckoning that awaited them both. When the paramedics began to work, Ethan's heart raced anew, fueling not just his own determination, but a newly ignited flame within. With newfound intensity, he realized this was a turning point that would shape his path. The time had truly come to confront Blake and all he represented, but an even darker truth loomed just beyond. What secrets lay buried beneath this incident? The next move would reveal far more than anyone anticipated, forcing Ethan to confront not just Blake, but an undeniable reality that could change everything. As the paramedics surrounded the pregnant woman, their grim focus contrasted sharply with the rising tension in Ethan's chest. He stood back, willing his racing thoughts to settle. Blake's mocking laughter still echoed in his mind, a bitter reminder that the battles declared in personal arenas often led to unforeseen consequences. He could feel the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, amplifying with every passing second as the woman's eyes fluttered closed. What if help didn't arrive in time? What if something horrific unfolded right before him while he remained paralyzed by uncertainty? But as he took a breath, steadying himself, a flicker of clarity pierced through the fog of chaos. The urgency plucking at his resolve wasn't just about his confrontation with Blake. It was about advocating for those who had fallen victim to someone else's carelessness. Each instinct urged him to fight not just for his own bruised ego, but to give a voice to those silenced by privilege. He stepped closer, observing the paramedics carefully. They were in a world of their own, eyes locked on their tasks as they stabilized the woman. Ethan felt pulled into that realm of pure urgency, their attention to detail igniting a fire within him. Observing their professionalism filled him with a surge of determination. He realized he could afford to be more than a silent witness. Rising tension now channeled into something actionable, and suddenly he wanted to communicate this to the crowd around him, to push others toward awareness. "Everyone, we need to clear some space. Make room for the paramedics," he shouted, his voice rising above the murmurs of disbelief. The crowd shifted, parting as if his words held magnetism. He could feel the glance of spectators sweeping over him, some judging, some confused. His heartbeat thumped loudly in his ears, and he was acutely aware of Blake's presence lurking nearby, a reminder of the very privilege fueling this tragedy. Ethan alerted the paramedics to the woman's condition, explaining the events leading up to the incident with as much clarity as he could muster. He could see their professionalism kick into high gear, and he realized his intervention hadn't just been about personal redemption. It had proven beneficial. "You did good," a medic muttered to him, eyes glistening with genuine gratitude. "You helped direct the energy to where it's needed." That singular comment anchored Ethan further into his newfound role. Suddenly, the urge to confront Blake distanced itself, replaced by a deeper understanding of his power and a realization of how words and actions could intertwine to effect change. But beneath the surface, something darker loomed, a gnawing curiosity born from the shadows Blake cast behind him. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that Blake's laughter held hidden truths, pieces of a puzzle that tied into this moment, leeching off the vulnerable. Was this accident a mere folly of fate or a calculated risk stemming from his arrogance? This suspicion throbbed in Ethan's mind like an unyielding metronome as the paramedics continued their work. With the scene evolving before him, he was on the precipice of a transformational moment, one that would define not just how he approached Blake, but how he viewed himself within this narrative. Yet, guilt gnawed at the edges of his purpose. What could he have done if he had focused on helping sooner? As he gathered his thoughts, Blake slipped closer into his peripheral vision. There was something insidious in the way Blake watched, an awareness sparking in his eyes that sent jolts of tension down Ethan's spine. The time for confrontation loomed nearer, but he sensed a deeper conflict, a rising one that would unearth their shared history and the implications tied to their families. What revelations would come to light as Ethan dug deeper? He stood on the precipice of not just another confrontation, but a moment that could unravel the very fabric of their lives. Would he be ready to face the consequences, or would he falter in this engagement? He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the daunting task ahead, because the truth waiting to be discovered would shake the pillars of their existence. Ethan's heart raced as he squared his shoulders, eyes locked on Blake, whose smug demeanor seemed to mock the chaos unfolding around them. The adrenaline coursing through him was both exhilarating and terrifying. This wasn't just about the woman on the ground or the paramedics who worked diligently to save her. It was about confronting the very inequities that had festered in their shared history. He felt the momentum of his revelation pulsating within the realization that his voice, when channeled correctly, could tip the scales of injustice. For too long, he had allowed the shadows of privilege to dictate his responses, to silence his instincts. No more. Every instinct urged him to speak, just as he had commanded the crowd moments ago. He now had to stand up against the privilege that Blake represented. Gritting his teeth, Ethan leveled a glare at Blake, who leaned casually against a lamppost, a stark contrast to the severity of the situation. "You think this is funny, don't you? Watching all this unfold while you stand by, completely unaffected?" he called out, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. Blake raised an eyebrow, a sneer tugging at the corners of his lips. "You're being dramatic, Ethan. Accidents happen. You should learn to relax." His tone was dismissive, a well-practiced veneer that concealed his discomfort. That dismissiveness stoked the fire in Ethan's belly. Relaxing doesn't change the fact that you're part of the problem. You always have been. Each word was a calculated move, a deliberate push against the wall Blake had built around himself. There was no time for half measures. "Isn't it rich coming from you?" Blake countered, eyes narrowing as the crowd began to draw closer, intrigued by the brewing confrontation. "You think you've got the moral high ground? You're just as capable of causing harm in your own way." A flash of anger surged through Ethan, forcing him to take a deep breath to regain control. He recalled the medic's appreciation from moments ago, the sense of purpose flooding back to him. This wasn't about defending himself against Blake's accusations. It was about exposing the truth beyond their tangled past. "What are you so afraid of, Blake? That someone might hold you accountable?" Ethan pressed, eyes narrowing as he stepped closer, sensing the shift in the crowd's attention. Their eyes darted between the two young men, drawn into the conflict, eager for an outcome. "Accountable for what? For enjoying the life I've worked hard to build?" Blake shot back, irritation coating his words. Yet there was an undercurrent of something else, an uncertainty flickering just beneath the confidence he tried to project. The growing amplitude of the crowd, inhaling, sharply told Ethan that they were all leaning closer to witness the revelation. "You haven't worked hard. You've benefited from the privilege of your name and money." This, he gestured toward the paramedics, still attending to the woman, is the direct consequence of that entitlement. Blake's brows furrowed, and for the first time, Ethan noticed a crack in his armor. "You don't know what you're talking about. You've never been on the inside to see how it really is." Ethan felt the ground shifting beneath him, the realization dawning that he had underestimated the complexities in Blake's life. "Then enlighten me. Show me the man behind the mask you've worn for so long. Show me the vulnerability, Blake, we both know it exists. Or are you too afraid of being seen?" The challenge hung in air, electric and palpable. Silence enveloped them, the centuries of rivalry folding into a question neither had anticipated. Ethan couldn't shake the tension intensifying around them. It was as if history had led them to this precise moment, cacophony and uncertainty swirling like a tempest. Would Blake crack under pressure, or would his facade remain intact? With the eyes of the crowd upon them, the truth shimmered just out of reach, waiting to be unveiled. "Maybe," Blake finally muttered, a flicker of defiance in his voice, "you'll regret demanding answers." Ethan felt his pulse quicken, awareness dawning that this confrontation, this revelation, held the potential to redefine everything. Would they uncover the truth, or would secrets unravel their lives even further? Gripped by the shifting tides, he braced himself for whatever storm lay ahead. The lines had been drawn, the stakes had risen, and the moment to discover the real Blake was finally upon him. As the crowd buzzed with anticipation, Ethan caught a flicker of uncertainty in Blake's eyes. It was a glimmer of something deeper, an unwillingness to fully engage with the challenge laid out before him. This was not just about their rivalry. It was about peeling back layers of guilt and resentment until something closer to sincerity emerged. Ethan knew this moment could reshape everything for both of them. He felt a mixture of defiance and vulnerability as he took a step closer, narrowing the space between them. You can brush off responsibility all you want, but every hand that helped build your life is stained by inaction. You talk about hard work, but have you ever fought for anything worth fighting for? His voice was steady, a stark contrast to the turmoil swirling inside him. Was he pushing too far? Or was this the confrontation he needed to ignite the change? Blake's reaction was almost imperceptible, but Ethan saw it, a slight tightening of the jaw, a flare of nostrils. "You assume so much. Just because I respect the advantages I've been given doesn't mean I don't know struggle." Ethan could feel the challenge in Blake's voice, small but significant. "Then show me. Stop hiding behind that self-righteous persona and let me see who you really are." He recalled what he had learned as a community organizer. Challenging people required sincerity. It was a skill that could expose truth but it also demanded a risk. Watching Blake's facade tremble slightly, Ethan pressed further. You think you're untouchable. How many people have you ignored while you pursued your success? Today, someone is suffering because of attitudes like yours. His heart raced, and with each breath, he felt the full weight of the crowd's attention pressing down on him. This was no longer merely about personal rivalry. It was a moment of moral reckoning that held the potential to carve paths for both of them. A ripple of tension passed through Blake's stance, but instead of retreating, he advanced just enough to keep Ethan in his sights. The psychological dance was shifting. You want me to unveil myself? To show vulnerability? His voice was lower now, more contemplative. What if I refuse? What if I let you drown in this idealism you cling to? Ethan searched for the right words, aware of the precariousness of the moment. Then you'll remain the same man. I've always known a coward in the face of reality. He felt a heat rising in him, a determination budding. Perhaps this wasn't just a challenge for Blake. Perhaps it was also a moment for Ethan to step into his own truth, to find strength in vulnerability. The air shifted, laden with the potency of unsaid potential. It was time for action. Ethan realized he couldn't control Blake's choices, but could certainly assert his own. Whatever happened next could set the stage for a profound transformation. In that charged atmosphere, a soft voice from the crowd broke through. Maybe we should focus on the woman who's hurt rather than this petty rivalry. The statement swirled like a gust through the already rising tension, but it didn't break the connection between the two young men. Blake's eyes flicked to the bystander, an evident irritation sparking behind his carefully constructed demeanor. Mind your own business, he shot back, but there was a crack in his confidence. Ethan seized the opening. You know what, Blake? This isn't just about us anymore. It's about taking responsibility. He pointed toward the medics, still tending to the woman. They need our support. Their fight is real. Are you going to let this moment slip away like you've done so many others? In that compelling showdown, Ethan finally embraced his evolution. No longer did he seek validation through confrontation. He wanted partnership and accountability. The weight of his words seemed to hang in the balance as he awaited Blake's response. Would they become allies in this unexpected crisis, or would they revert to old roles of adversarial antagonism? The choice was unfolding right before him, but the answer felt unnervingly close, yet achingly distant. The tension felt as if it could snap. Moments teetered on the brink of an irreversible transformation. Would Blake remain entrenched in his privileged arrogance, or would he step into the humility that Ethan was beginning to embrace? And as that defining moment approached, Ethan's resolve began to crystallize a renewed commitment to forge a path toward justice, a journey where vulnerability could foster strength and perhaps redefine everything they believed about each other. Ethan's pulse raced as he locked eyes with Blake, gauging the hesitations that danced behind his well-crafted mask. Each second stretched long, heavy with unspoken truths lingering between them. The crowd had swelled in anticipation, and in that intense silence, Ethan realized this was more than just a confrontation. It was an opportunity to ignite change, not only for Blake, but for himself as well. Just decide, Ethan urged, his voice barely above a whisper, but imbued with urgency. What do you want this moment to mean? He could see the internal battle waging within Blake, a conflict between inherited privilege and emerging accountability. With a quick inhale, Blake appeared to shift his posture, accepting the stakes of their exchange. Would this be the moment where he would sink or swim, drown in his own arrogance, or break free towards something more authentic? The crowd barely breathed, their collective gaze pulling tighter around them both. Uncertainty began to cloud Blake's features, marking a departure from his typical confidence. You don't understand, he finally muttered, the bravado slipping like sand through his fingers. There's more play here than you know. Ethan leaned in, feeling an uncontrollable mix of hope and fear. Then help me understand. Show me you're not just the product of your circumstances. You have power. Use it for good. Blake stepped back, confusion flickering across his face. In what world do you think I can make a difference? My life has been shaped by circumstances beyond my control. Ethan shook his head, a fire igniting within. And yet, here we are. It's not too late for you to choose something different. You can't hide behind your privilege anymore. The confrontation reverberated with a depth that neither had anticipated. This wasn't just a conflict. It was a challenge to redefine their identities. Blake's defenses faltered, but then a storm of resistance rose within him. And what about you? You took a step forward, challenging Ethan's ideals. What gave you the right to dictate how I should feel or act? You think you're better because you've had your share of struggles? Ethan's heart thumped in his chest, ready to push back, but he had to center himself first. No one else better. I simply don't want to be complicit in indifference. I've seen too much suffering to stand by. I refuse to remain silent. This is bigger than you and I. The words held weight, hammering credibility into his heart. Ethan felt a sense of purpose well up inside him, something he and tapped into before a burning ember that ignited his convictions. Perhaps he was finally discovering the kind of leader he aspired to be, one willing to confront his own biases and insecurities while challenging others to do the same. As the medics continued tending to the injured woman, a wave of emotion crashed over him, an urgency to act. If you're afraid, join me in that fear. Let us face this together. Don't let your privilege be a shield, but rather a launching pad to help others. Blake appeared to waver now, vulnerability beginning to seep through his facade. Yet doubt still clung to him like a shroud. The question remained. Could he break free? Ethan felt an unfamiliar resolve blossom. He wasn't merely orchestrating a confrontation anymore. Instead, he grasped the power of empathy and connection during this upheaval. But would Blake seize this moment, allowing his walls to crumble? Or would he retreat back into the shadows of his past decisions, leaving Ethan to bear the weight of their shared responsibility alone? The air thickened with anticipation, the next move hanging precariously over them. A decision loomed just out of reach, and Ethan held his breath, ready for whatever revelation might explode from the fissure they had begun to pry open. He only hoped that somehow they could navigate this murky terrain together. Would that bridge emerge, or would they remain stranded on opposite shores once more? Ethan's heart pounded in his chest, caught in a place where fear met hope. He had never imagined this confrontation would lead to such a stark illumination of personal stakes for both him and Blake. The crowd, momentarily hushed, became a backdrop to their unraveling truths. Ethan took a deep breath, determined to sustain this potential breakthrough. Blake, listen, he urged, a sense of urgency pushing his words forward. This isn't just about apologies or guilt. It's about stepping into who you can truly be. Your actions can echo much louder than your words. You could see the gears turning in Blake's mind, a fierce battle between expectation and reality playing out on his face. What if I fail? Blake's voice trembled, revealing an infinitesimal crack in his facade. What if I don't have what it takes to make a difference? Ethan's instincts flared to life, recognizing the significance of this admission. In that moment, he saw not the privileged heir he had resented, but a young man grappling with the weight of inherited expectations. You won't know until you try, Ethan replied, resilience threading through his tone. Using your privilege to elevate others isn't a test. It's a responsibility. But it starts with courage. The palpable tension around them shifted, charging the air with anticipation. Blake's shoulders slumped slowly as realization began to dawn on him. You're right about one thing, he mumbled, each word biting through layers of defensive rhetoric. I've hid behind my privilege for too long. It's just, I don't know if I have it in me to change. Ethan's empathy surged, transforming the confrontation into a moment of raw connection. He locked eyes with Blake, willing him to recognize the potential that lay beneath the surface. You won't be alone in this. Whatever choice you make, I can stand beside you. But you have to step away from fear and into accountability. A flicker of understanding crossed Blake's features, the flickering unmistakable. It was not just a clash between them. It was a shared horizon, a path forward through uncertainty. As the medics finished their work on the woman, Ethan noticed the shifting dynamics around him. People were beginning to whisper, engaged by the emotional tug-of-war unfolding before them. A sense of purpose surged anew within him, igniting not just his own passions but extending outwards like a ripple effect. Does this mean anything to you, Blake? Are you willing to embrace not just what you stand to lose, but more importantly, what you stand to gain? Your legacy does not have to be defined by your father or your past. Ethan pressed, his words carving deeper into Blake's self-perception. The hesitation in Blake's eyes slowly transformed into something fierce. What was once uncertainty evolved into a deep-seated resolve. Ethan could feel the shift. It was as if the ground was quaking beneath them, signaling a forthcoming emergence where authenticity threatened to burst forth. But just when Ethan thought a breakthrough was within reach, he noticed a flicker of desperation shadow Blake's resolve. But how do I even begin? Ethan felt the intensity of the moment rest on his shoulders. Start by taking real steps, actions people can see. Volunteer, mentor, use your voice. It's more than just apologies. It's about reshaping your identity, creating new definitions of who you are. Blake nodded slowly, the gravity of Ethan's proposition sinking in. But just when their connection seemed to crystallize, the sound of a siren in the distance reminded Ethan of the world outside this pivotal encounter. The weight of reality pressed heavily upon him, a reminder that change was not a singular effort. Ethan looked around at the crowd, feeling charged with a mission larger than himself. He had ignited something in Blake, but the gulf was not fully crossed. Don't let this moment fade away, Ethan urged. Make it the catalyst for something greater. Your choices could define a new beginning, not just for you, but for everyone affected by this. Blake's gaze pierced through the veil of self-doubt, revealing a flicker of determination. Yet, just beneath that flame lay uncertainties that still had to be confronted. What path would Blake choose? Would he embrace this opportunity for transformation, or would he retreat? Ethan held his breath, aware they were on the brink of significant decisions. As the sirens grew closer, the urgency of their situation hung palpably in the air. Blake, Ethan said, readying himself for whatever choice lay ahead, this is more than just your decision. What you decide now could reshape the narrative of your life forever. Are you ready? In that moment, Ethan knew the time had come when the past could either resonate with remorse or echo with newfound purpose. The horizon loomed, and it was uncertain where it would lead. Would Blake heed the call, or would he retreat, caught in the darkness of intimidation and doubt? Ethan stood at the precipice of transformation, his heart a tempest of conflicted emotions. The crowd surrounding them seemed to hold its breath, as if aware that the next words spoken could alter the trajectory of Blake's life. Every moment hung in the air, heavy with the weight of choice and consequence. Blake's gaze shifted, scanning the crowd, searching for validation, perhaps even pity. But Ethan felt a noxious cocktail of sympathy and frustration boiling within him. He wasn't there to indulge Blake's fears, but to shatter the illusions propping him up. Stop looking at them, Blake. This moment is about you. Are you ready to confront your own shadows? The silence that followed was deafening. Blake's expression morphed, revealing an internal struggle that mirrored the chaos outside. His shoulders squared a little more, and for an instant, Ethan thought he might seize the moment, but then doubt clouded Blake's features. What if they don't believe I can change? He asked, his voice a mere whisper. Ethan took a careful step closer. This isn't about their belief. This is about you believing in yourself. Start small. Commit to one small act. It's how lasting change begins one step at a time. The sirens wailed in the background, a reminder of the chaos of the world around them, a world that craved genuine action instead of empty words. In that moment, Ethan began to synthesize his own internal conflict, realizing he had been running from his truth just as Blake had been. He had fears and uncertainties of his own, overshadowed by the mask of certainty he wore when he spoke to others. Blake, I know you feel trapped, he continued, his voice firm yet inviting. But think about what happens if you don't act. You let this moment slip away, and what then? Will it be just another missed opportunity, another forgotten chapter in your life? Instinctively, Blake's hands balled into fists at his sides, his fingers digging into his palms. I want to try, he admitted, the fight in him awakening. But the fear, it's suffocating. Ethan nodded, recognizing the grip of fear. It's natural, but recognize it for what it is, a catalyst, not a barrier. Transform that energy into a commitment. Say it out loud, Blake. Your intentions can forge your path. The words hung in the air, heavy with promise and challenge. I want to change, Blake finally said, his voice cracking. But how do I ensure it's not just an immediate reaction? How do I turn it into something real, something lasting? Focus on how you can use this moment, Ethan replied, becoming increasingly resolute in his own purpose. Think about the woman and her family. Channel your privilege to support them. Volunteer for causes that matter to you. Use your voice and your resources to create dialogue, to foster empathy. This change must come from within and shine through your actions. Blake took a deep breath, visibly wrestling with the enormity of his decisions, but a flicker of determination coursed through him. Already, Ethan sensed the shift. The air around them felt charged with potential. Yet adversity still loomed. But what if I make a mistake? Blake questioned, his brows knitted in confusion, revealing a profound vulnerability. Making mistakes is part of growth, Ethan answered, his tone unwavering. It's about accountability. You must be willing to reflect, learn, and adapt. Failure doesn't diminish you. It becomes part of your story, a chapter, not the entirety. Encouraged by Ethan's unwavering force, Blake squared his shoulders once again. The shift felt monumental, even as uncertainty threatened to creep back in. Would this be enough? Would he truly embrace a new identity? In that moment, the sirens grew louder, reminding them harshly of the reality looming beyond their shared bubble. There was no time to waste. Action was paramount. Blake, Ethan said, raising his voice slightly to cut through the tension. What are you going to do next? You've recognized the need for change. Now it's time to act. The world is waiting. Ethan felt the tension in the air scintillate. This was their defining moment. Blake met his gaze, a mixture of anger and hope igniting within him as he contemplated his next move. Ethan could sense the weighty urgency hovering between them, the space filled with possibilities and doubts. Would Blake engage with the world differently from this moment forward, or would he retreat into the comfort of his fears yet again? As Ethan waited breathlessly for Blake's response, he realized the unfolding narrative was as much about his own transformation as it was about Blake. Ready or not, the next chapter beckoned. With a determined gaze, Blake straightened, his struggle evident, but undeniable resolve flickering into view. Ethan could almost feel the gears turning in Blake's mind, processing the weight of his words and the urgency surrounding them. This was not merely a personal battle anymore. It was an intersection of choices between vulnerability and complacency, action and inaction. I want to make a change, Blake finally declared, vulnerability lacing his voice. The admission hung heavy in the air, swallowed by the collective hope of the crowd. But I want to do it right. I want to show that I can be more than just a product of my upbringing. Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him, the prospect of transformation alighting within him. Then think about practical steps. Use your name, your resources to elevate voices like the woman who was injured today. It's time to become an ally and advocate. The sirens wailed again, a reminder of the stakes. This accident could be a catalyst, a turning point not only for their confrontation, but for real impact in their community. Blake nodded slowly, a newfound clarity sharpening his features. I can do that. I can start by reaching out to those affected, advocating for policies that protect pedestrians and ensure safety. I can support mental health programs for families who face trauma from these incidents. His voice was more resolute now. The fear had begun to morph into tangible action. Yes, Ethan exclaimed, buoyed by Blake's commitment. That's the kind of accountability that resonates. You'll not only be addressing immediate needs, but also tackling deeper societal issues. Take this moment. Make it part of who you are moving forward. Blake paused, a flicker of uncertainty sweeping across his face once more. But what if nobody believes I can really change? What if it's just empty promises? Ethan stepped closer, his voice threaded with conviction. Change doesn't depend on the beliefs of others. It starts within you. Own your journey. Be transparent about your intentions. Mistakes will happen, but it's how you address them that matters. Use your platform to elevate those voices that have long been silenced. The crowd buzzed with intrigue. They were not merely watching. They were witnessing a fundamental shift. Blake seemed to absorb this. He tilted his head slightly, an emerging sense of determination flickering in his eyes. I will hold myself accountable. I will document this journey, share the struggles and successes as I navigate this new path. Exactly. Ethan felt a rush of hope. Here was the breakthrough they both needed. He could see the transformation taking shape before his eyes, not just a young man within a cycle of privilege, but someone willing to step into the light and own their impact. Then what's next? Blake questioned, a hint of gratitude surfacing. What about you? This is your moment, too, Ethan. Ethan was momentarily taken aback. He had been so focused on encouraging Blake, he and T fully acknowledged his own evolution. You're right, he admitted, taking a deep breath. This fight has become more than just seeking justice for Sarah. It's about building a future where privilege and accountability coexist. Together, we can amplify the voices of those impacted, including Sarah S. Blake nodded, a sense of camaraderie blooming between them. Let us tackle this together. We can create initiatives that facilitate community resources, amplify stories of those affected by recklessness, and foster dialogues that lead to real change. As the crowd murmured their support, Ethan felt the weight of their shared mission take root. He had long harbored feelings of insignificance next to Blake's privilege, but had now stepped into a realm of purpose where his desire to advocate for Sarah intertwined with the desire to help Blake forge a new path. With renewed focus, Ethan gestured toward the paramedics wrapping up their efforts, realizing the power of this very moment. We must not forget the woman who was hurt today. She is the catalyst for our change. Let us extend our support to her family and ensure they have the resources they need. The crowd, united in their purpose, began to move with intent, ready to engage with the impact of the day. Blake, once a figure of arrogance who had caused distress, embraced this newfound commitment wrapped in empathy and accountability. Their path lay before them. Ethan felt solid confidence surge within him. The agony of uncertainty had transformed into a virtue of purpose. He recognized a shift not just in Blake, but in himself. They were two men bridging the chasm forged by privilege and pain. The horizon shimmered ahead, whispered of opportunities bound together by transformation, urging them forward into an era of constructive change. This was not the end, it was the beginning. The moment where Ethan had seized possibility, demonstrating that vulnerability fuels strength and empathy births courage. And now, the echoes of that day would resonate, crafting a legacy of change that ensured a safer, more equitable future. The time to act was now. To support stories of personal growth, transformative journeys, and meaningful change, don't wait another second. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is your moment to show your support. The stories of overcoming adversity will transform lives, and you play a crucial role in that by engaging now.